There is a leather-bound registry in the Kelthran National Archives that contains exactly 14 names. Not 14,000. Not 1,400. 14. It was compiled in 1879 and labeled as the first official national census of Kelthran, a nation that at the time had an estimated population of 400,000 people. The registry sits in a temperature-controlled vault, cataloged under Record Group 41. Administrative transitions, and no one has been able to explain what happened to the other 399,986 names. I found it while researching property inheritance disputes from the 1880s. I was looking for documentation of how families proved lineage before centralized record keeping existed. What I found instead was a gap so large it shouldn't be possible. The official explanation repeated in every administrative history of Kelthran is straightforward before 1879. There was no national registry. Names were kept locally, in parish books, guild ledgers, family Bibles, and town hall records scattered across hundreds of municipalities. The 1879 census was the first attempt to consolidate all of this into a single national system. The process was supposed to work like this. Census takers were dispatched to every province with standardized forms. They would visit each household, record the name of the head of household, the names of all family members, their ages, occupations, and place of birth. The forms would be collected, sent to the capital city of Anvik, and compiled into regional registries. Those regional registries would then be cross-referenced and combined into the Master National Registry. The timeline was ambitious. The census began on the 1st of March, 1879. It was scheduled to be completed by the 31st of December of that year. According to the administrative reports filed with the Department of Civic Records, the project finished on time. The Master Registry was presented to the Kelthran Council on the 15th of January, 1880. It contained 14 names. The Council accepted it without recorded objection. Here is what I keep coming back to. The 14 names in that registry are not random. They are not a sample. They are specific individuals, all of whom held positions in the newly formed Department of Civic Records. The registry lists the director, 3 assistant directors, 6 regional coordinators, and 4 chief clerks. It is, in effect, a roster of the people who created the registry itself. Everyone else is missing. I started pulling administrative records to understand what had happened. The Department of Civic Records was established by decree on the 12th of November, 1878, 4 months before the census began. Its stated purpose was to create a unified national system for recording births, deaths, marriages, property transfers, and civic identity. Prior to this, such records had been maintained locally with no central oversight. The decree establishing the department includes a budget allocation of 62,000 marks, a substantial sum for the time. The money was designated for hiring census takers, printing forms, establishing regional processing centers, and constructing a central archive building in Anvik. The budget documents show that all 62,000 marks were spent by the end of 1879. But here is the detail that doesn't fit. I found payroll records for the census operation between March and December 1879. The Department of Civic Records employed 417 census takers across all provinces. Each was paid a monthly wage of 12 marks. The payroll ledger lists their names, their assigned regions, and the dates they were employed. The final entry is dated the 28th of December, 1879. The notation reads, "Census operations concluded. Final tallies submitted." 417 people spent 9 months collecting data across an entire nation. The result was 14 names. I tried to trace what happened to the census forms themselves. According to the administrative manual published in January 1879, each census taker was required to submit their completed forms to a regional coordinator by the end of each month. The regional coordinator would review the forms for completeness, compile them into monthly reports, and forward both the forms and the reports to the Central Archive in Anvik. The manual specifies that all original forms were to be preserved as primary source documents. It includes detailed instructions for their storage, including the type of boxes to be used, how they should be labeled, and the environmental conditions required to prevent deterioration. The manual even describes the layout of the archive building, which included a dedicated vault with controlled humidity and temperature, specifically for storing census records. That building still exists. It is now called the Kelthran National Archives. I requested access to the census vault described in the 1879 manual. The archivist took me to a room in the basement. It matched the description from the manual. Exactly the shelving units, the environmental controls, the labeling system, everything was there. The shelves were empty. The archivist explained that the original census forms had been destroyed in a fire in 1891. The fire had started in an adjacent storage area and spread to the census vault before it could be contained. Most of the 1879 records were lost. Only the master registry, which had been kept in a separate location, survived. He asked if there was an incident report. The archivist pulled a file. The report was dated the 14th of August, 1891. It stated that a fire had broken out in the archives building at approximately 2 a.m. The cause was listed as probable electrical fault in lighting system. The fire was extinguished by 6 a.m. Damage was extensive to the southeast section of the building, which included the census vault. The report noted that no backup copies of the destroyed records existed. Now here is where the timing becomes difficult to explain. The Kelthran National Archives building was constructed in 1879 specifically to house the new census records. It was one of the first buildings in Anvik to be equipped with electric lighting. The electrical system was installed by the Kelthran Electric Company, which had been founded that same year. I found the original electrical inspection report in the archives of the Ministry of Public Works. The inspection was conducted on the 10th of December 1879, 2 weeks before the census operation concluded. The report certified that the electrical system met all safety standards. It specifically noted that the lighting in the census vault was properly insulated and poses no fire risk. The system operated without incident for 12 years. Then, on the 14th of August, 1891, it failed catastrophically in the one room that contained the original census forms. The fire destroyed more than just the census records. According to the incident report, several other document collections were also lost, including municipal birth and death records that had been transferred to the National Archives for consolidation, property deeds from several provinces, and correspondence files from the Department of Civic Records covering the period 1878 to 1880. What survived intact and untouched by fire or water damage was the master registry with its 14 names, along with all administrative records related to the creation of the Department of Civic Records, including budget documents, payroll ledgers, and the architectural plans for the archives building. I kept digging in the archives of the Kelthran Historical Society. I found a collection of personal papers donated by the family of a man named Henrik Voss. Voss had been one of the 417 census takers employed in 1879. His papers include letters he wrote to his wife during the 9 months he spent traveling through the northern provinces collecting census data. In a letter dated the 17th of June, 1879, Voss describes his work. He writes that he has completed forms for over 3,000 households in his assigned region. He mentions the challenges of reaching remote villages, the resistance some families showed to providing personal information, and his concern about meeting his monthly quotas. He sounds proud of his work. He believes he is helping to create something important. In a letter dated the 3rd of November 1879, Voss mentions that he has submitted his final batch of forms to the regional coordinator. He writes that, in total, he collected data from approximately 11,000 individuals over the course of his assignment. He expects to be paid his final wages within 2 weeks and plans to return home by the end of the month. There's one more letter, dated the 8th of January 1880. In it, Voss mentions that he has heard the master registry has been completed. He writes, "I am curious to see the final result of our labors. They say it will be available for public review once it is officially presented to the council. I hope they have spelled everyone's names correctly." There is no indication in his letters that he ever saw the registry. There is no record of what he thought when he learned it contained only 14 names. But here is what bothers me most. I found similar collections of papers from 3 other census takers. All of them describe the same experience: months of travel, thousands of forms completed, detailed records of households visited, and then silence. One of them, a woman named Marta Kleist, kept a detailed log of every household she visited. The log is preserved in the archives. It lists names, addresses, family compositions, occupations. She visited 743 households in the southern provinces. Her log contains the names of over 3,000 people. None of those names appear in any official registry. The official explanation, when I asked the archivists about this, was that the fire had destroyed the proof of their work. Without the original census forms, there was no way to verify what data had been collected. The master registry was the only authoritative record that survived. Therefore, it became the definitive record of the 1879 census, logical, reasonable. Except for the question, no one seems to ask. If the master registry was compiled from the census forms, and the census forms contained hundreds of thousands of names, how did only 14 names make it into the registry before the forms were destroyed 12 years later? I found one more document that I haven't been able to explain. It is a letter dated the 3rd of February 1880, addressed to the director of the Department of Civic Records. The letter is from a town clerk in the eastern province of Herinth. It reads, "I write to inquire about the status of the census records submitted by your office. Our municipality provided complete household registries as requested, including all births, deaths, and marriages recorded in our parish books over the past 50 years. These documents were collected by your census taker in September 1879 and have not been returned. We require these records for local administration. Please advise when they will be available." There is no record of a response. The letter was filed in a folder marked Miscellaneous Correspondence, 1880, and apparently forgotten. The Kelthran National Archives instituted a new policy in 1892, 1 year after the fire. All future records would be duplicated, with copies stored in separate locations to prevent total loss in the event of another disaster. The policy remains in effect today. The archives now maintain redundant copies of everything. Everything except the 1879 census, which exists only as a leather-bound registry containing 14 names. I requested to see it. The archivist brought it to me in a reading room, wearing white cotton gloves, handling it as though it were the most precious document in the collection. I opened it carefully. The pages were thick, high-quality paper. The names were written in careful calligraphy. Each entry included the person's full name, their position in the Department of Civic Records, and the date they assumed that position. The last entry was dated the 14th of January 1880, 1 day before the registry was presented to the council. On the final page, there was a notation in smaller script. It read, "Registry complete. All census data processed and compiled. Original forms archived as per departmental protocol." The notation was dated the 31st of December 1879. The person who wrote it signed their name. It was the director of the Department of Civic Records. His name was the first one listed in the registry. Before 1879, names in Kelthran were kept in hundreds of locations: parish books, guild records, family Bibles, town registries, scattered, inconsistent, difficult to centralize. After 1879, names were kept in a single national registry, 14 of them. The rest are somewhere, in the ash of a fire that destroyed only what was needed. In letters, never answered. In logs, never reviewed. In a vault built to preserve them, then emptied by flames that chose their targets with impossible precision. The registry still sits in its climate. Controlled vault, catalogued, preserved, waiting for someone to ask why an entire nation agreed to forget 400,000 names in exchange for 14.